today as we do this parent guide to talking to your teens about teen dating violence. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Tanai Grime, and I'm an intern at the Family Justice Center, and this is...
Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl Kravitz, and I was a member of the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, part of the FJC, and I still do a lot of volunteer work with the FJC, and we are here to welcome you. Thank you for coming. It's going to be a really interesting evening. And again, we so appreciate you being here to learn about different things that are impacting your children right now. Tonight, you're going to learn about dating violence statistics, what relationship abuse is, the warning signs, very important, how to talk with your child, and we will give you resources. Want to make sure, Tanae and I really want you to ask questions. There's going to be a chat box up, and if you want to ask questions, please write them in the chat box and we will answer them as best we can at the end of the webinar. If you're sharing a story or experience, please keep names confidential. That's very important, and that's, one of the first rules. And this is really difficult content. We recognize that. And we encourage you to consider your own well-being and take a break if you need to. Practice self-care above all else. Thanks.
So one of the first things we like to discuss is what it was like when we were 18. As I see if questions come up, I will answer them as well as Cheryl. And if you would like to join, feel free to put it in the chat or go ahead and speak out loud. So what type of clothes were we wearing as a teen? Personally, I was wearing more athletic clothing because I dance a lot. So athletic shorts, leggings, yoga pants, definitely some crop tops. At this time, I want to say dance bras became a thing, so we're wearing that. But in general, I don't think our clothing has changed as much as teens are wearing today. Maybe not as revealing, but it was kind of getting there, if that makes sense. What about you, Cheryl?
I was wearing bell bottoms, crop tops, and a whole lot of fringe. So much fringe that you couldn't imagine, and sometimes a little headband tied around my head.
Yeah. Chokers. Chokers became a big thing while I was in high school. What is that, like 2012, 2015-ish? I don't know how those became in style. Does anyone else want to share what they wore as a teen? No? Let's go on to the next one. Shoulder pads. Ooh. I wore those in my dance costume. So what technology were we using? I think at this time, iPhones were becoming a big thing. Not a lot of my friends nor I had iPads or Apple Watches or our own personal laptops. So it was really just our phones that we were using to access text messaging, social media, just to stay in contact with our friends. We didn't have all these different apps and gadgets to keep connected.
I am sorry to say my technology was a wall phone hanging in a little hallway at my mother's. And what my sister and I would do is disappear. The cord was long enough to go into the bathroom. And so if we wanted a private call, we'd go in the bathroom and hide kind of in the bathroom to talk.
That reminds me of the scene in Parent Trap.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
We have a cordless phone. Is that like a cell phone? A cordless phone is a cell phone?
No.
AOL, I remember that.
I have that. Whoever has that, I have it.
Yeah. It's crazy to see how technology has changed over time and how advanced it is now. Yeah. So who did we look for advice? Ooh, personally, I look towards my friends for advice and kind of just put things into my journal as I learned the lesson myself. My parents weren't necessarily open as they are today, just because they didn't know any better themselves. So definitely my friends, and kind of just me through just learning through experience.
You know what? I like you, some of my friends, but mostly I looked at Ann Lander's advice column. I grew up in Chicago, and I'd look in there all the time to see if there was something that I could relate to. There never was, but that's where I went.
Yeah. Who did you guys look for advice? Who do you guys look to for advice? Was it your parents, maybe aunt or uncle? Sometimes I found out it was easier to confide in a friend's parent because it just seemed like so much cooler than mine. That they will listen. Of my siblings, that's a really good one, especially if older ones they can look for advice. So one person said, oh, my sisters, my parents were immigrants, so I connected more with my sisters. I can totally relate. My parents were immigrants, so they were boom, boom, boom. This is the way it's supposed to be. Don't stray from it, or else it's your fault. So I definitely relate to that. And the next question. So what did you do when you hung out with your friends? My mom kept me pretty sheltered, so I never really got to hang out with my friends so much. But I know I was always so jealous of other friends going out to their mall with their friends or going out to the movies. At the time, downtown Silver Spring was the hangout spot, but I never got to go alone. A parent was always lurking in the background or something. So when I did hang out with my friends, it was pretty fun. But we just saw movies, just like window shop. Because what money did we really have at that time? Yeah. Other than that, it was my dance friends, so we were dancing all the time.
We lived in a blue collar neighborhood in Chicago, and there wasn't a whole lot to do. So if I went out with my friends, we'd go to the bowling alley, not to bowl, but just to hang out. Or, this is so funny, when I think about it now, we'd go to our old elementary school and sit on the steps and talk. That's what we did. And we'd wait for the good humor truck to pass by, and everybody had a dime, whatever it was, to buy the ice cream. And then we go back to the steps of the school and sit.
Interesting. Interesting place to pick, elementary school steps. Yeah, we have some people being sheltered, and they say it wasn't good at all. And yeah, being sheltered is just keeps you in a closed circle, a closed bubble. So when you get out to the real world, it's like your eyes open up big. So what did dating mean? Dating at the time, I kind of feel like it was like, I liked you, you liked me, let's date. Let's call it is. I'm your girlfriend, you're my boyfriend, or vice, whatever the situation may be. And that was kind of it. I'm not sure if any meaningful connections were ever made. Yeah.
When I was, a teenager, going steady was the big thing. And so, if you were going steady, if you were a girl, the guy would, because that was kind of the way it broke out during those days. The guy would give you a class ring usually, and the ring was usually too big, and you take Angora and wrap it around and then fluff it all out. And, basically that was it. I don't remember a lot of just meeting a friend and going out for pizza or something. When you were dating, you were dating.
That's interesting. I'm not sure, like, I never really dated in high school, so I'm not sure what it was like. Like, did people actually like go out on dates, or did they just claim it in a social area so everyone can see that they were dating? We have one person saying having to eat lunch together, having to meet at lockers after classes. Definitely saw that a lot in high school. Holding hands. Yeah, I also remember everyone making it a big deal when someone was dating. It would be like the hot news of the day or something. But yeah. And then I think this is the last one. What do you think dating means for teens today? Ooh, again, I'm not sure how meaningful connections are today in the teens world. Um, I hear a lot of like, I don't know, does dating, what time frame is dating? Is dating like 3 months, 6 months? I don't know. But every time I hear like teenagers talk, is like, oh, we dated for 3 weeks. It's like, what connection could you have made?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just thinking that with my younger daughter when she was in high school, um, if it was prom, for instance, used to be, it would be, you go as a couple. They go as a big
Mm-hmm.
group. And I didn't see a lot of one-on-one dating, although I'll get into that a little bit later, but mostly it was a group. Did you see that too today?
Yeah, I went to, like, we all had our dates, but we went as a group. So that's
Yeah.
what we did in prom. And I think that's pretty much the same thing. I will say promposals were a big thing. I'm not sure if it's still a big thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Someone says they're not sure, however, it's stressful and may involve a lot of pressure. Oh, I can definitely see that. And I can definitely see how social media plays a role in that for sure. You see all these happy couples on social media, but never know what's going on behind scenes. So teens are putting all that pressure on themselves, like, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, when really it's just like, set your boundaries and figure it out together and see what works for both of you. We have someone saying dates with groups is the best, or just a trip of friends is best. Yeah, all really good insight.
So the statistics, they're real interesting. The first one, we're going to pull it up, is that it's kind of scary. 1 in 3 teens is involved in an abusive relationship. And later on, we're going to go into the definition of what comprises abuse. But that's a pretty scary figure when you think about it. 1 in 3. LGBTQ young people have higher rates of abuse. I wonder sometimes if that has to do with, it's a group that can be secluded. There can be being afraid of coming out to someone to tell what it's about, what's going on in their own lives. And so I'm sort of not surprised, unfortunately, that there's a higher rate of abuse. And there's a higher risk for teens that are being abused for substance abuse, eating disorder, risky sexual behavior, and further domestic violence. And I want to talk about that on the next slide. There are higher rates of pregnancy or getting a sexually transmitted infection. And I just want to digress for a minute from these stats to tell you that I had a fraught relationship with my parents when I was growing up. And by the time I was 17 in high school, I was pregnant. And during that time period, it's very different. Tanae and I were talking about it earlier than it is today. You were shunned, and part of what happened is there was nobody for me to talk with about what was happening. And one of the reasons that I became pregnant is that I was pressured and verbally abused, and a couple of times physically abused by my boyfriend at the time. Higher rates of attempting suicide. We hear unfortunately about that a lot. I remember reading maybe about a year ago about a town somewhere, I think it was on the West Coast, where a number of young people were committing suicide. And, the attempts at suicide began to grow. And I think a lot of that has to do with there's nobody to talk with in a safe place to kind of explain what is going on with you personally and asking for help in a non-judgmental environment. And I can vouch for this, 58% of parents cannot identify the warning signs. When I look back, I think about the signs that I was exhibiting, kind of sneaking around, bruises, not wanting to tell my parents who I was dating. And they, for whatever their reasons, were unable to talk with me about it. We're going to discuss this a little bit later. I'm not surprised that that figure is as high as it is. Here's a question. What percentage of teens who experienced dating abuse ever told anyone about the abuse? Do you want to put it in the chat? The answer is 33%.
Less than 50. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Renee?
So in this video, or one thing that Choose Respect Montgomery does every year is allow teens in middle school and high school enter a contest while creating a video demonstrating their version of teen dating violence in an educational manner. In this video, this is one of the contest winners a few years ago. You'll see some of those traits and some of those, the way they view teen dating violence, I guess, yeah.
Maybe I did. Should I apologize for that? Maybe she is. She's everyone's dream date. Maybe I am wrong for that. Well, maybe I do need to free up some more time in my schedule for him. I'm such a bad person. I'm untrustworthy. I need to be better. I know she's prettier. I'm not worthy. I'm a disgrace. He's right. He's right. He's right. He's right. Just like a mirror reversing what comes in front of it, abusers can manipulate and say things that convince victims to believe they are in the wrong.
So next we're going to discuss the relationship spectrum. Under the relationship spectrum, there's 3 categories. There's healthy relationship, there's an unhealthy relationship, and an abusive relationship. Before we get started on discussing the different types, I would love for us to go ahead and make our own definitions of these different relationship statuses, or maybe just even naming some characteristics that will fill up a healthy relationship. So if you want to go ahead and put some ideas in the chat of starting with a healthy relationship, what that can look like or what that should look like. Personally, I think having fun is healthy. Having good communication, keyword good in that. Both working together, definitely. We want to have a partner that has a good listening ear and vice versa. You want to make sure you have a good listening ear as well, and being able to communicate in a healthy way. Is there anything you want to add to that, Cheryl?
No, I don't think so. I think you've covered it.
Yeah. Allowing each other to freely express themselves, feeling power is shared, definitely. Anyone else want to add anything? Or no, or taking slow steps through life with you, definitely setting boundaries, setting the pace, asking questions for sure. All very good. Do you guys want to go ahead and start putting some things about an unhealthy relationship, what that can possibly look like? Bad communication, in my opinion. One person always talking without the other person listening, it being one-sided, definitely. What else can be an unhealthy relationship? Control or trying to take control. Making one person feel bad about themselves, things like that, all very good. And then an abusive relationship, or saying rude comments as well. An abusive relationship, I think that's when we start to see some of those different traits of the different types of abuse, like manipulation, taking your phone, trying to control yourself, stalking. Oh, that's a very good one. Not a lot of people consider stalking abusive. And that's a really big one in today's society. Manipulation, I think we said that. Isolation, inappropriate photos saved, definitely. Or trying to convince someone to send you inappropriate photos. All very good examples of an abusive relationship. Verbally abusing someone, yeah. So in the next slide, I have different scenarios that will pop up. And as I read each scenario, you can go ahead and put in the chat, would this be a healthy relationship? Would this be an unhealthy relationship? Or would this be an abusive relationship? So the first one is, my partner listens to me when I am upset. Is this healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? What do you guys think? We have someone saying healthy, healthy, definitely. This is healthy, yeah, for sure. We want to make sure, oh, we can move on, yeah. My partner tells me I'm ugly and that I'm lucky to have them. What do you think, healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? This is someone saying unhealthy, 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 abusive, yeah, unhealthy, unhealthy, abusive. So we have some mixed feelings here. This one is considered abusive. When we're in a relationship, we want to make sure we're feeling empowered, make sure we empower our partner and our partner empowers us. Telling me I'm ugly and saying that I'm lucky to have you, that, you know, that diminishes someone's character. So this is abusive. The next one, my partner doesn't let me spend time with my friends. Is this healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? Unhealthy, unhealthy, abusive, unhealthy. Again, I see some mixed feelings here. This one is considered abusive. So my partner doesn't let me. Was that someone? My partner doesn't. Am I hearing myself? Do you hear an echo? My partner doesn't let me spend time with myself. This is definitely abusive. It would be a difference. It would be unhealthy if it was like my partner is trying to trying to take me away from my friends and family. The key word is trying. They haven't got control over that yet, but they're trying to. But here it says my partner does not let me. So this would be considered abusive. The next scenario is, my partner doesn't listen to what I want to do. Is this unhealthy or abusive or healthy? What do we think? Unhealthy? 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 Yeah. I think we're all reaching the right, getting the right idea here. This is considered unhealthy. Exactly. This is considered unhealthy. I think we all got that, the gist of that one. My next scenario is, my partner tries to make all of the decisions. Is this healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? Go ahead and read that sentence again and look at some words. Look at the words played out in this sentence. Is this unhealthy, healthy, or abusive? Unhealthy, abusive, unhealthy, unhealthy, unhealthy. This is unhealthy. Again, that keyword is try. They haven't got complete control over that that decision yet, but they're trying to, so that makes it unhealthy. And then last scenario is, sometimes me and my partner get bored with one another. Is this healthy, unhealthy, or abusive? Unhealthy, normal, unhealthy. Yeah, so this one is considered healthy. I'll talk about this later on in the next slide, but just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean you have to spend every waking moment together. It doesn't mean there's not going to be a time where you guys are bored with one another. And that's completely normal, like someone said, and it is healthy. It's okay to like take some time apart and then create fun later on. Very good. So next we're going to talk about what are some characteristics that should be involved in these different types of relationships, or that characteristics that we will see in these different types of relationships, starting with a healthy one. So some different characteristics that we would see in a healthy relationship are respect, good communication, trust, honesty, equality, and enjoying having personal time. Our teens are in middle school, late middle school, I would say early high school, or even just later in high school. At this time, they want to hang out with their friends. They want to go to school events like the football game or prep rallies or things like that. And, by equality, which I mean is like, if one person's allowed to do this, the other person's allowed to do this. If one person's allowed to go to Friday Night Lights, the next person should be allowed to go to Friday Night Lights. That's what I mean by equality. And again, enjoying having personal time. Just because our teens are in a relationship doesn't mean they have to spend every waking moment with their partner. Our teens should have their own separate group of friends, their own separate activities outside of their relationship. And, of course, make time for each other when that time is agreed upon. Yeah. And then our next is unhealthy. Some characteristics that we see in an unhealthy relationship is not communicating well, being disrespectful, untrustworthy, they're dishonest, they start to name call, and they're trying to take control. Again, that keyword is trying. I see some people raising your hand. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in the group chat, and then we'll get to it towards the end of the presentation. And then ending off with an abusive relationship. Some characteristics that we'll see in this is shift blaming. Someone's starting to try to isolate their partner. They start to manipulate their partner and can become violent. By shift blaming, I'm not entirely sure if everyone knows what that means. So it's basically putting their actions on someone else. An example I like to use is, I only threw your phone because you made me mad. I'm blaming my actions out on you, when in reality, I should be the one taking responsibility.
Now we're going to talk about what is dating abuse. Is this the video? I'm not remembering.
No, this one is not the video.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Dating abuse is very similar in the definition to what is basically any kind of partner abuse. It's a pattern of behaviors one person uses to gain and maintain power and control. Those are the key words over their partner. And if you're not in an equal relationship, as what Janae was talking about before, one person is exercising that power and control and making the other person feel like they have no say in the relationship. Dating violence occurs in both opposite sex and same-sex couples, and any gender can be abusive. There's a stereotype that women tend to be the victim and male person tends to be the abuser. That is truly a stereotype. Dating abuse can affect anyone in a couple relationship. And we see that violence occur in all of any way that couples are formed. We can see dating violence. And again, the key is if it's power and control. Okay?
So next we're going to talk about the different types of abuse, and there are 6 of them. We're going to start with physical abuse and emotional verbal abuse. So physical abuse is any intentional use of physical force with the intent to cause fear or injury, like hitting, shoving, biting, strangling, kicking, throwing objects, or using a weapon. A few things I want to point out here. Some of these examples here, like hitting, shoving, strangling, those are all high offense, right? It's not always going to start that way. An example I like to use is that sometimes a couple might be arguing, a teen couple might be arguing, and just to show they're angry, to show that they're annoyed, they might shrug their partner on the shoulder just to show that annoyance as they walk by each other. That right there is a start to physical abuse. It's not going to always start to these extreme offenses like hitting, shoving, biting, or strangling. I would also like to point out, and Cheryl, please correct me if I'm wrong, I know Montgomery County strangling is a criminal offense. Is it the state of Maryland?
I believe so. I think that there was a law passed. Smita, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there was a law passed a few years ago about strangling.
Yes, she said it is a criminal offense in Maryland. So if you find your teen is in this situation, they can always press charges. Or if your teen is the one being the aggressor, someone can press charges against them. Definitely. So emotional verbal abuse, non-physical behavior such as threats, insults, gaslighting, constant monitoring, humiliation, intimidation, isolation, or love bombing. So I know gaslighting and love bombing is kind of new terms within the past couple of years. I say 2020 and on. So I'll go ahead and explain those. Gaslighting, it's another form of manipulation. It's when, in this instance, the abuser is constantly filling the victim's head up with false realities so that they change their perspective. This will look like, so the abuser can say things like, well, it never happened that way. You're just being dramatic. Don't you remember it went down like this? And then the victim will go back to themselves, like, maybe I am the one being dramatic. Maybe I'm the one that's remembering the events incorrectly. So it makes them change their reality, change their perspective. So that's what gaslighting is. And then love bombing. Love bombing is throwing so much affection towards someone that it's kind of uncomfortable. It can saying things, some things like, if we ever broke up, I'll just kill myself. Or I love you so much, I don't know what I'll do without you. Although that might seem like nice things to hear, although that might feel like my partner really does love me, that's uncomfortable knowing that if we were to ever not work out, now you put the responsibility of your life in my hands. So just throwing a lot of affection at you that makes you feel uncomfortable. Next, we're going to talk about sexual abuse and financial abuse. Sexual abuse is any action that pressures or coerces someone to do something sexually that they don't want to, including rape, coercion, or stealthing. A lot of people don't know what stealthing is, but this really pertains to our male partners. Stealthing is when the person agrees to wear a condom, but in the middle of the sexual act, they take it off without their partner knowing. Yes, that is considered sexual abuse. But I also want to point out that these are pretty extreme offense. It doesn't always start out that way. I would like to say any unwanted touching, any unwanted hugging, anything that you don't want to happen to your person, but someone forces it upon you, that is a start to sexual abuse. So definitely teach your children that, like, if you don't want to happen to you, if you say no and someone pressures you or pushes you towards something that you don't want to do, that is a start to sexual abuse. And then we have financial abuse. That's using money to have control, such as gift giving with strings attached. Example is, I gave you this, now you owe me. It's never even exchange. It's never, if I go out with my friends one night, they get the tab, and the next time we meet up, I get the tab. It never goes back and forth like that. It's always, because I gave you this, now you have to do this for me. It's the keyword, I have to do something. So another example that we see at the Family Justice Center is sometimes their abusive partner doesn't want their partner to work. So if they were to ever leave, if you don't have a job, you don't have money, how would you ever take care of yourself? So that's another example of financial abuse. Next, or lastly, we have stalking and technological abuse. Stalking is being repeatedly watched, followed, monitored, or harassed. It can happen in person or online, or may not include unwanted gifts. One thing I like to tell teens when I give presentations to their health class is that sometimes these unwanted gifts can just be nice gestures, whether it's giving us a ride to school or carrying our books through the hallway or, buying us lunch or a snack. All that seems really nice, but that's what invites someone in. And as the relationship continues, then you might just start to see some unhealthy or characteristics or borderline abusive characteristics. And then your teen can think to themselves, like, well, how did I even get there? They were just so nice to me at first. Well, again, although those were nice things, you didn't ask for them. Those were just unwanted gifts. And that's how they play their way in. That's how an abusive partner plays their way in. And then lastly, we're going to end off with technological abuse. This is the use of technology and or social media to intimidate, harass, or threaten a current or ex-dating partner, such as demanding passwords, checking cell phones, excessive or threatening texts, or stalking on social media. I also want to point out that sometimes our teens can post things without someone's consent, whether that's personal information, a goofy photo, just something they don't want out there. I just want to point out that if without someone's consent, that can be considered technological abuse, whether it's supposed to be funny or it's not that big of a deal. It could be a big deal for someone else, or if someone posts something about your teen, it can be a big deal for them. So we just want to be making sure that what we're posting out for it's about is it's okay for it to be out there, if that makes sense. So in this video, you're going to see some of those characteristics about the different types of abuse, the excessive text, some emotional abuse in there, some technological abuse in there. So yeah.
Chicken sandwiches?
Dude,
I'm freaking down.
Chicken
I'm so
sandwiches.
down.
Chicken sandwiches.
I'm so
Waffle
down.
fries, dude!
I think I did really good in that test, man.
I don't know. I don't know how I did.
Wait, hold on one second.
At least a B.
One second.
Oh, that's another thing. I don't like to I don't know the right answer.
Because like, if you fail.
I just really don't know what to say. It's like our 4th time.
Is everything okay?
Whatever. Yeah.
David?
I saw him in the woods and like
Chicken sandwiches.
Power and control. We saw that in that video. That video really gives me chills every time I hear that little beep, knowing that he is being stalked basically by his abuser. It's really scary. The other scary part is that 88% of teens say their preferred method of communication is through texting. So you saw what happens in that video when a person is being stalked by an abuser. Yeah, 3, 4, maybe 5 times a day. That's, you know, pretty much what happens. 20 times in 3 minutes is not what happens. And, you know, I have heard scary stories about, you know, how you can do cell phone tracking, and perhaps the person who is being victimized, abused, has a tracker on their phone. Their abuser is looking to see where they are. Teens online is a subject that is difficult to talk about because you want to give your child autonomy, and yet this is something that you cannot be monitoring them 24/7. It's difficult. There are a couple things that we have learned. Number one is to lead by example. So if you're on your iPhone all the time and they're hearing these texts coming in all the time, or you're not paying attention to them in real life because you're on your phone, they're seeing that and they think that that's okay. I asked my daughter about the second one. Ask your child about the apps and websites that they use. And the issue here is to be able to have an open enough way to communicate with your child so they will tell you about the apps and websites they use. Is that realistic? Not necessarily. So you should talk with them. I asked my daughter about a friend of hers who I know has lied about her age and gone on Tinder. And I would stake my life that her parents don't know about it. So I talked with my daughter about how she can have the conversation with her friend to talk about what could be a dangerous place to be online, which gets into setting boundaries, but be realistic. You're not looking over their shoulder all the time. You're not out with them, at school with them. If they're locking themselves in their room, you don't know where they are. And you don't know where they are online. So setting those boundaries for them and knowing that you have set the example for them about what is safe, having that conversation, which is difficult. and reassuring them that they can always talk to you. Again, I'll use my daughter as the example. She was being stalked, all the things that Janae talked about, by a young man when she was in high school at Walter Johnson in Montgomery County. And she did not go right to me right away. She went to a person who was her mentor from the University of Maryland, and they came to me together because she knew that between the person who was her mentor and me, it was a safe place. And if you don't feel comfortable having that direct conversation right away, see if there's somebody in your life, in their life, who you trust, who they trust, that they can talk to. Talking about personal information, everything that you put online is there for the world to see. So when you're checking into Facebook, I guess they don't use Facebook, Twitter, or you're using different kinds of apps, showing where you are, who you're with, what you're wearing, what you're doing the next day, that's out there for everybody to see. And social media is just that. It's not private. It's not private. And so I think having that conversation about what could happen if they post something that they don't want to make the rounds on social media, including bullying somebody else, cyberbullying. It's happened to a lot of young people that we've read about who unfortunately, maybe took it to the next level and even attempted suicide because there was nobody that they could really talk with. Nobody was listening, and they needed a safe space. I would encourage anyone who is on here tonight to talk about what that safe space, that safe person, who that is, and then have these very difficult conversations, and then take the time to act on the warning signs. Because if your eyes are open, you're going to see them.
Now, when it comes to the world of online dating, I think parents understandably feel quite concerned. It's not probably something that they did themselves. So there's a few tips that can really help your kids. I think firstly, it's important to discuss the dangers of online dating and grooming, right? So the idea of, do you know who you're speaking to? What are the safety measures that you take when you meet someone that you've been speaking to online? How safe can you feel sending things online to someone who is a stranger, who you don't know? So kind of really discussing not just kind of the possibilities of meeting people online, but what the pitfalls are and how to deal with those. Secondly, it's important to teach them how to keep their identity safe. So again, when you meet someone right away, you're not going to give them a bunch of information about yourself, right? You do that slowly and gradually as you feel more confident and comfortable. Likewise, you need to speak to them about doing this online. So while it's fine to kind of, text in, the privacy of your own home, the idea of letting out too much information too quickly is something that you really should alert your kids to. Deal with the awkwardness. You got to discuss topics that might make you feel uncomfortable. So again, we know that with the online world, sex is not something that's just offline. So a lot of young people will send pictures or explicit text. Talk to them about, what they need to think about before they do this. And as awkward as it may feel, it's really important to set aside the time to talk to your kids about this. It's the same thing as when we speak about pornography. You want to speak to your child before a pornographer does. When it comes to online dating as well, the idea that you have an understanding not just of what it feels like to like someone and want to connect with them, but you understand the importance of doing this safely is something that's really important for you to get on top of with your kids. If your teen is already dating offline, Talk to them about online dating. Again, it may be for some kids they've met someone at school and they're dating offline, but they're kind of moving into online and connecting, and that's fine. But it's really important, again, to get an idea of, do they feel safe doing it? Do they have any concerns? And listen, I think the important thing here as well is you need to trust your kids, right? You're not going to go on a date with them offline. So by the same token, you don't want to be over their shoulder online. This is more about having that discussion kind of removed, getting them to think critically about what they're doing and why they're doing it. I think it's vital that you establish safety rules about what is shared online. It's really easy to kind of say be safe, but what does that mean? Get them to think about, sharing things, everything from, their address or passwords to even photos that they may not want to have out there. Get them to think about why they shouldn't do it and what they can do instead. You want to respect your teen space as well, right? So while you're going to want to protect them from everything, the reality is that the best thing you can do for them is alert them to the things they need to be careful of, make sure they know that they can come to you, and then take a step back and let them have these relationships and have these experiences, but feel able to come to you and discuss. Another really important thing that you should touch on is, what does a healthy relationship look like? Again, these are young people trying to figure that out. So speaking about things like respect and boundaries, both offline and online, is key. Talking about, expectations around what they should ask for and what they should expect, someone else to demand of them. Getting them to think about how to say no when things feel uncomfortable. These things are critical, and I think this is one of those places that both on the offline and on the online world is fundamental to having a healthy relationship. You need to help your kids set up safe privacy settings. Again, for a lot of us, technology feels daunting and scary, but there's a lot of advice on how to do this to ensure sort of simple things like, not everyone knows where they are, sort of location services, making sure those are off, making sure, things are set up so that other people can't access information about them that they wouldn't want them to access. Have these discussions and have them early on, and then have them consistently.
That was a really good video.
They did them.
So next we're going to discuss consent. Before I get into it, I know a lot of people have a hard time grasping the concept of consent. Even young adults I talked to today, they're like, some of it they just don't understand. So I know teens are struggling with it as well. But consent, what is consent? It's giving someone permission for any sexual contact that happens. It's freely given. It's of a person's own free will and 100% absent of pressure. When you give someone consent, it's agreeing and saying yes throughout the whole entire act of the sexual act. An acronym we like to teach kids or young teens is FRIES. Consent is freely given. It's reversible. I said yes now, and I can always change my mind and say no later. That is okay. It's informed. It's definitely enthusiastic, and it's specific. With this informed and specific part, just because I said yes to kissing doesn't mean I said yes to anything that may follow afterwards. So you want to set those boundaries, make sure the teens involved or the person involved knows what's going to happen, make sure they're comfortable with that. Because again, consent is freely given and it's absent of pressure. I want to make sure I know what I'm getting myself into and I consent to that activity or that act.
A number of years ago, many of the leaders of at that point, the domestic violence movement, awareness movement, discovered that there was actually a cycle of abuse of some kind. Sometimes it's called the wheel of abuse. And you can really pinpoint when these things happen. It starts with what we call the tension building phase. And tensions increase, there's a breakdown of communication, the victim becomes fearful and feels the need to placate the abuser. I can tell you from my own experience that it is very real. You actually, in your own body, the person who is being victimized knows that there is the tension is there. They're physically and mentally feeling it. And somehow the abuser is picking up on this. The second thing that happens is the actual incident. So the tension is beginning to build. You can see this circle. Then there becomes different kinds of abuse. We talked about them earlier. It could be verbal, it could be emotional, or it could be physical. And sometimes it might start out as verbal and then begins to escalate into emotional and physical abuse. The way it happens, there is anger, there is blaming, there is arguing, there is threats, and there's intimidation. And really, at this point, when the incident happens, there's very little that the victim can do to take care of themselves because you're right at the peak of the cycle. Next comes reconciliation. And, you know, we've all heard the term, well, why? I'm going to use pronouns she and he. Why did she go back to him? That's part of the cycle. The abuser apologizes, gives excuses, blames the victim. Well, if you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have to do that. Denies the abuse occurred, or says that it wasn't as bad as the victim claims. Tanae talked about gaslighting. That's a perfect example of gaslighting. It wasn't that bad. You're imagining it. And then things become calm. The incident is forgotten. Perhaps there are gifts that come from the abuser. Like nothing had happened, and the person who is being victimized forgets all about it, because at that point, there's no abuse taking place, and they've entered what we call the honeymoon phase until the tensions start building again. It is so recognizable when it's happening, and these are the things to look out for. Tanae?
I do want to add something to the cycle of abuse.
Sure.
I want to point out that, like, this is just the most common cycle that we see teens and young adults and any adult go through, but it's not always going to look like this. Sometimes in this tension building phase, I like to also say red flags. Sometimes we don't see those red flags. Sometimes it goes straight to the incident. So I just want to stress that it's very important to make sure you have an open line of communication with your teens about what a healthy relationship is and what it means to really set your boundaries, because sometimes you're not going to have that tension building phase. You're not going to have those red flags or those warning signs. You're never going to see it coming. So you want to make sure, like, you let your teens know before they enter the dating scene, or as they're entering the dating scene, like, this is what you should expect out of a healthy relationship. So what are the warning signs of someone who might be experiencing abuse? What are some warning signs you can look out for in your teen? Your teen might apologize for their partner's behaviors. They might lose interest in their hobbies or spend less time with their friends. We start to see those isolations happening. They're worried about upsetting their partner or making them angry. Their weight or appearance have changed dramatically. The grades start to drop. They lose interest in school. They don't see the importance of it anymore. They have injuries or bruises that they can't or maybe not even want to explain. They're constantly responding to their partner's texts or calls because, you know, those text messages are coming in, and if they know their partner has abusive tendencies, they don't want anything to ever escalate. So they're constantly on the phone, making sure they're messaging back, whether it's through text, the Instagram DM, the Twitter DM, things of that nature, and become more critical of themselves, depressed, or withdrawn. One thing I want to point out as I talk about this slide, and as Cher talks about the next slide, is that these are not the only warning signs out there. These are just the most common types that we would see in teens. So if something makes you suspicious, if something makes you raise an eyebrow, go ahead and ask your teen, is everything okay? Or let them know that when they're ready to talk, you are here for them to talk. Because again, these are not the only warning signs. So something's definitely gonna make you think, like, I noticed this change in my teen, is everything okay? So just let them know that you're there for them and ready to talk whenever they are.
And we're going to get into now how to help someone who may be mistreating their partner. This is another one where we really, really need to watch what's going on in the relationship that you have with your child. And it means that you have to be vigilant about watching what's happening. You know how a parent or a guardian or maybe an older sibling knows, you know that something is a little bit off. Here are the things to look for. Texting or calling their partner constantly. You know how we saw the video where there were beep, 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 beep. Perhaps you see your child going beep, 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 on the phone, talking to their partner, texting their partner all the time. You notice that your child is jealous or insecure. You might overhear them talking to someone about that, or you can sense the insecurity in them. Name calling their partner, they're supposedly in a loving relationship, but perhaps you overhear them, or they just might say to you, so-and-so is just a real jerk, when you know that that person isn't. Making false accusations. Perhaps you know, I would hope you would know who your child is dating or in a relationship with, and you hear them saying they're cheating, they're this, they're that, but you know full well that they're not. The accusations are false, and that will get into the gaslighting we talked about earlier. Blaming others. People who are abusers are really good at doing that for their own feelings or actions. He or she or they made me do it. Isolation. You might overhear or think about your child going out, doing things, and you ask where their significant other is. They are staying home. They just need to be by themselves. That is not the way relationships work. Physically violent. You might even notice bruises on your child. Perhaps they're black and blue marks on their knuckles from unfortunately hitting their partner. They become possessive or pressuring their partner to have sex. It happens more often than we know, than we think. And so that is why it is so important to have the open communication with your child. We're almost at 7 o'clock. We're getting warning signs. We're almost at 7. So I'm not sure how we want to handle this. Do we want to open up for questions now or go to Smita, do you want to?
Why don't we go over at the suggestions on how to help?
Okay. How to help someone who maybe is treating their partner. I'll just go ahead. If your teen is being abused, actively listen and validate what you're hearing. If your child comes to you and says, so-and-so is being really mean to me, that might be the opening, or it might be something really benign, like, oh, so-and-so just said I need to stay in this weekend. That's a red flag. Janae talked about the red flags. That's one of them. Be sensitive. Don't accuse or diagnose. There's a lot of help out there for you. And we at the Family Justice Center or other organizations can help have that conversation. Make sure you tell them over and over and over again, it's not their fault. It's not their fault. And empower them to make decisions, and those decisions we would hope would be the correct ones. Janae, do you want to do this one?
Yeah. Some other ways, you want to make sure you have access to information that includes what dating violence is, and hotlines and local resources. There's a lot of local resources out there, and you will have a resource fair for you on March 27th at our Respect Fest at Wheaton Recreational Community Center, I want to say. And then another thing, they may not listen to you or they may get angry, but let them know that they're always there for support. We want to make sure that they know that regardless of which way they choose to go about their relationship, that no matter what happens, you are there for them. And lastly, oh, go ahead. And lastly, you want to let them know that their safety is your number one priority. Some examples of what you can say is, I'm worried about you and your safety. You deserve to be treated with respect. I know you care about them, but I care about you. The stuff going on between the two of you isn't normal relationship behavior. And lastly, I have some resources here I'd like you to read.
If you see someone, your child mistreating their partner, or you might overhear them talking to a friend about this, absolutely choose the right time and place to have a full discussion. And that would not be in the middle of a family dinner or a place where they're feeling embarrassed. Approach them when they are calm. Be direct, firm, and clear about what you have seen, and talk to them about what healthy and unhealthy relationships are. I noted that someone had asked in the chat about where to go for resources, and I'm wondering, since we are pretty much at the end of the time, if we could put up the slide about resources that are available in our community. Okay, a couple different things. The Montgomery County Family Justice Center has a number of support services, and all services are free. I would suggest calling there, going on the website. There is a lot of information for you, and it's really important that you know that there are places available for you or your child to reach out to for help. We also, here's the phone number for the Family Justice Center. There's also a website. The Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse, and they're non-denominational. I do some work with them, and they are really, really good. Both Jacada and the Family Justice Center will see anyone over the age of 16. Montgomery County Crisis Center will see anyone over the age of 12. If they're under the age of 12, they need parental accompaniment. And then the National Dating Violence Hotline. And I think earlier we talked about loveisrespect.org. There's a phone number and there's a text. There are lots and lots of resources available if you need them and want them.
Lastly, I'm going to end with information about our Respect Fest. As I mentioned earlier, this Sunday, March 27th, 1 to 4 p.m. at the Wheaton Community Recreation Center, we are having our live event. At this event, we'll have activities, free food, raffle prizes, yoga classes by Cheryl, I believe, self-defense classes, community resource fair where you learn more resources that are available to you, your teens, uncles, aunts, cousins, for anybody in the community. Got some performances from local high schoolers, and we will be announcing our Choose Respect video contest winner. We will have a shuttle bus that will be running constantly through Einstein High School. So if you just park there, it's a free shuttle. And then we'll have one-time shuttle that runs from Seneca Valley and Richard Montgomery High School. They'll leave maybe around 12:30, and then take you back to your car at 4 p.m. If you want any more information about the webinars that are happening later on this week or about this event, go ahead and go to the link down below.
If you have any questions, because we are out of time, what we will do is look at the questions that you have, and again, suggest that you look on the websites, especially for the Montgomery County Family Justice Center, to get more information. And we thank you, Tanae.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.